Hello there, world history students. Let's learn all about World War II. Out of all the topics of world history, this is probably the one I know the best. So on this first slide here, just tells you other names for World War II. WW2, the Great Patriotic War, that's what they call it in Russia, and it's known as the Axis versus the Allies. It is the largest war in the history of the world. I hope we never have a World War III, but World War II, there's a whole lot to know about it, and I'm going to cover it all at length in this series of videos. So let's check it out right now. All right. So if World War I was the war of the trenches, World War II is definitely the war of the tanks and the planes. All right, and then here's some bombing of an aircraft carrier. These are these giant ships we made in World War II that allow planes to take off and land like floating airfields. And then the very end of World War II, we make atomic weapons, bombs that are capable of annihilating entire cities. Thankfully, these weapons have only been used aggressively twice in the history of the world, and let's hope they're never used again. All right, so how did World War II begin? I'm actually going to take this in a unique way and tell you what was going on in Asia in 1937. There was something called the Marco Polo Bridge Incident. It was this group of 5,000 Japanese soldiers who were right there on the border with Manchuria and China. And these 5,000 soldiers just kind of woke up one day. They were led by this young 17-year-old kid named Shimura Kajuro. And they were like, you know what, guys? Today we should invade China. And they were saying that Japan was so much better than China, that the Chinese were trash, and that Japan should just take over the biggest country in Asia. Shimura Kajuro inspired all of the other guys who were hanging out with him in that border crossing, and these 5,000 Japanese guys ran into Chinese territory, killed a bunch of Chinese soldiers, raised the Japanese flag, and took over a town. And of course, you know, the word reaches the Japanese government and the Chinese government, and they're like, what just happened? Did we just get invaded? It was only like 5,000 guys. Like, was that serious, Japan? What's going on? And the Japanese high command obviously didn't order that event to happen, but the Japanese were like, well, I guess we're invading China then. So in response to what these Japanese guys did, like the Japanese high command actually did punish Shimura Kajuro, and he later did die in the war. But in the end, they didn't like give China their town back, and Japan just decided to go full-on invasion, and they would be invading China for the next 8 years. All right. So, yep, there's Shimura Kajuro, the guy who sort of started World War II. And then this is this idea. China's this big, giant country. Japan's relatively small, but Japan has better weapons, so Japan might just win. Okay, and the thing that made things really complicated for China during the entirety of World War II was the Chinese Civil War was going on. And it was going on before World War II, and it'll actually go on after World War II. And it was just like the Russian Revolution, where it was this civil war between the whites and the reds, the capitalists, the communists, and the capitalists were led by this dude named Chiang Kai-shek. And Chiang Kai-shek, he got a lot of money and assistance from the United States during this war. We were like, hey man, fight the Japanese. But Chiang Kai-shek repeatedly didn't fight the Japanese, and he instead just fought the communist Chinese. And the communist Chinese were led by that other guy, Mao Zedong. He will ultimately win in the end, just like what happened in Russia. And Chiang Kai-shek just, you really would think, hey, your country's being invaded by Japan. Put your differences aside, unite together, fight the person invading. But that didn't really happen so much. The Chinese were largely fighting themselves the entire war. All right, so there's Chiang Kai-shek. There's Mao Zedong. Here's one of his quotes. The Japanese are a disease of the skin. The communists are a disease of the heart. And I guess with that quote, you would think, what's the more serious disease? Well, he would say the heart disease. So that's why he kind of focused on them. All right, and then, China was just a mess. So Chiang Kai-shek largely had a lot of loyalties in southern China. The communists had a lot of middle China. Then there were some other parts of China that were just doing their own thing entirely. And Japan's going to take advantage of all this disunity in China and invade this much bigger country. And yeah, there's some pictures of this war that goes on in China. It was real bad. Okay, and many Chinese, including the Emperor of China, a dude named Pu Yi, They join up with the Japanese and they create this new country in northern China called Manchukuo. And Puyi's life is so interesting. You know, this guy was born as the Emperor of China, living in the Forbidden City, having a great time. But over the course of his life, he makes terrible choices. He, of course, allies with the Japanese. The Japanese put him in charge. The Japanese repeatedly have him do more and more repressive things to the Chinese people. He kind of agrees. And at the end of the war, he's captured by the Chinese. They put him in prison for 10 years, and they eventually do release him from prison and give him a job as a gardener in the Forbidden City. So, yeah, he started as the emperor, ended as a gardener. Poor guy. But it's what happens when you make bad life choices. All right, moving on. So there's Puyi. He was Time Magazine Man of the Year. Here he is as a gardener later in his life. Excuse me. Yep, and then here's Japan. So they already had taken over Taiwan and Korea but by the start of this time period of history, and here they are now taking over northern China. And yep, the Japanese raising their flags, and Manchukuo, a new nation. Here they are taking over. Oh, goodness. All right, so Japanese soldiers, they quickly conquer most of China's major cities, and they start a brutal campaign against Chinese civilians. According to Japanese racial social Darwinist hierarchies, the Japanese thought they were superior beings to Koreans, Chinese, Taiwanese, and other Asians, and they're going to take out some serious genocidal style violence against the Chinese people. So here are the Japanese marching through China. They've got fancy planes and tanks. The Chinese don't really have that. Here they are raising the Japanese flag on the Great Wall. And then you see them just kind of spread. They kind of invade all of the major cities along the coast and push deeper and deeper into China from there. And here they are charging in, fighting the Chinese. Man, Japanese historical art is so cool. Okay, so there's this really terrible event that took place called the Rape of Nan King. And this is an event that still to this day, Japan doesn't really think was that bad. But I'm telling you, it really happened. In December 1937, Japanese troops entered the capital city of Nanking. The head general of this Japanese army was the uncle of the Japanese emperor. So there is some kind of relationship to the imperial hierarchy here. And Japanese soldiers, by all accounts, just went into a killing and destructive frenzy against the people of the people of Nanking. I've actually taken out some of my more intense pictures for this online presentation, but I want to emphasize that there were some unbelievably brutal things that happened in Nanking that totally is on the scale of what the Nazis did to the Jews in World War II. Okay, moving on. So, yep, here's some pictures here. So, the total number of Chinese killed by the Japanese in World War II is greater than the number of Jews that the Nazis killed in the Holocaust. And still to this day, the people of China are not cool with the people of Japan. And then, yeah, a lot of terrible, terrible things occurred in Nanking. And here is a newspaper article where these two Japanese officers wanted to test who had a sharper samurai sword. So they went around decapitating random Chinese people. And you see their sort of contest of who could cut off the most human heads in an hour. And, that's their final score right there in this Japanese newspaper. Okay, so Japan actually never fully takes over China. China's a really big country, whole lot of people, whole lot of mountains. So the Japanese are kind of stuck there fighting in China for the next 8 years. Around the third year or so, the United States gets really upset hearing about all these terrible things Japan is doing in China. And the United States says, you know what, Japan? We're going to cut off all oil trade with you. We know that you need oil to operate your tanks and your planes and your ships, and we don't like what you're doing in China. We don't want to support what you're doing, so no more trade with Japan. And the Japanese, they kind of did the math in their head, and they were like, oh man, without other countries providing us with oil, we will lose this war. And the Japanese refused to think about losing the war. So in response to this American lack of trade, Japan's going to get aggressive against us to keep their war going. So, yeah, and here's something I just want to mention briefly. When I was in Tokyo, I went to the Japanese War Museum, and I saw pictures like this, saying that the Japanese said, America was aggressive against us. America cut off our trade. We needed trade with the United States, so that's why we're going to attack the United States later in World War II. So that was sort of their logic, saying that America started the fight against them. All right, so yep, oil. Oil is the big thing in World War II. If you don't have oil, you can't operate all these fancy World War II kind of equipment. And yeah, the League of Nations, they sent a lot of letters to Japan and were like, hey, Japan, stop attacking China. Japan just didn't care. And here's America cutting off the gas to the Japanese. Okay, now let's talk about what was going on in Europe. So Hitler was in charge of Nazi Germany during this time, and Hitler was just going all over Germany, or not only Germany, going all over Europe and the world, really, and making friends. Here he is with the leader of Spain. Here he is with the leader of Romania and Hungary. Here he is with the leader of Palestine. And Hitler tries to make this big international case, saying, look, I was born in Austria. Everybody in Austria speaks German. The German people, the Austrian people were functionally the same. I want to absorb Austria into a greater German country. And the rest of the world hears him out, and they're like, okay, Hitler, why not? So Hitler officially does this thing called Anschluss, where without even firing a shot, Austria and Germany unite as one super country. Later, we'll recognize that, Austria had a big military, and Austria had a military factories. Hitler's going to put all that to work later in world history. So Hitler's starting to grow the size of his super Germany. All right, making friends. Hitler's going all over the world. Nazi people, there they are, waving the Nazi flag as they march into Austria. And Hitler's getting the Z-Kyle from a bunch of people. Okay, and, the Austrian thing was kind of step one, but Hitler's going to keep reaching to just kind of absorb more countries. And this concept is called appeasement. It's where you sort of let a bully get anything they want out of you without putting up a fight. And so Hitler's next target was the country of Czechoslovakia. And I am actually ethnically Czech, so I take this next bit quite personally. The people of Czechoslovakia did not want to join up with Germany. Okay, many people there speak Czech. They're not really about German culture. And the people of Czechoslovakia said, we can't fight the Nazis alone. Now that they've taken over Austria, they surround us on three sides. But if Czechoslovakia had help from, say, France or Britain, we will fight and we will not allow the Nazis to take us over. So Hitler decided to have this conference called the Munich Conference. And at that conference, he brought the leaders of France, the leaders of Britain, and they all sort of talked about what was going to be the future of Czechoslovakia. And Hitler, through his incredible ability to talk to people, somehow convinced the leaders of France and Britain that Germany deserved to take over Czechoslovakia. And the people of France and Britain gave Hitler approval to take over the country. And as soon as the Czech people heard about that, they were like, okay, well, I guess we're Nazis then. And they just kind of joined up with Hitler. And Czechoslovakia still to this day has one of the largest military production plants. They make a whole lot of guns and a whole lot of tanks. Hitler knew that, and Hitler's going to incorporate all that into his bigger and better army leading up to World War II. I think in a very clear analysis, it would have been a way smarter idea not to let Hitler take over Czechoslovakia. The whole world should have united and forcefully stopped Hitler from growing his super Germany, because he's about to get too powerful where he's going to be way more difficult to stop. All right, and here's a picture of Hitler with the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. And as soon as this conference was over, Neville Chamberlain flew back home to Britain and gave this famous speech called Peace in Our Time. Neville Chamberlain was like, look, I did it. I allowed Hitler to take over more land. We'll have peace forever. And, you know, what would happen a year later is World War II. So he was proven very wrong from his decisions he made. All right, so yep, this is just a map of Germany just growing and growing, taking over more lands. And okay, so of course, after Hitler takes over Czechoslovakia, his next target is the country of Poland. Hitler starts making this big case saying that there's a whole lot of German people who live in Poland, especially the city of Danzig, which was true. I mean, there were a lot of German people who lived there, and some of those people probably wanted to join up with Hitler. But the rest of the world was like, oh, crap. You know, we thought Hitler would be happy with just Czechoslovakia, and now he wants Poland. So Britain and France say, Hitler, if you take over Poland, we gonna fight you, and it's gonna be World War II. And the thing is, though, that Hitler was worried about the Soviet Union. What would Stalin do? Because Hitler, he really only kind of wanted this German part of Poland. He really didn't care about the rest of Poland. So Hitler actually sent an agent to the Soviet Union, and they made a secret pact, Hitler and Stalin, where they would kind of cut Poland in two, and each country would take a slice. They also, in that pact, said they would have peace for 99 years. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Hitler's going to betray the pact later. But I thought that was just kind of interesting that these two dictators are going to basically fall in love with each other temporarily. But if you remember some of Hitler's ideas he expressed in Mein Kampf, you know, he hates communists, he hates Jews, he wants land in the East. Stalin should not have made this deal. And this deal is called the Molontov-Ribbentrop Pact. So it's going to protect Hitler on his east flank. So after he takes Poland, he's going to be able to focus entirely on the Western European theater. All right, so that's what their plan is. Cut Poland in half. Here's Hitler and Stalin. Someone's taking someone for a walk. Oh, no. And then there's Poland dead in the middle, and those two guys are splitting the victory. And here they are. I wonder how long the honeymoon will last. That's pretty hilarious. All right, I'll do this one in the next video. Peace out.